As a teacher, I have regularly described prayer as simply communication with God to my classes, and added that if we ignore those people with whom we wish to have a relationship with, we would find that before long we didn't have one at all. And our relationship with Jesus is the same, I say. That we have to spend time with him, getting to know him so that we can understand each other. And though it's quite simplistic, this analogy is actually very useful. Our own relationships are complex. They, like us, endure changes and challenges. There are different tones or approaches required depending on what situation we're in. As a relatively newly married person, I'm coming to know that there are many facets to our relationship. There are times of great laughter and joy, but also times of disagreements or confusions that require silence, contemplation, that need us to be separate or apart from each other, to sit with something before it can be a topic of conversation or discussion even. Seeing our relationship with Jesus in any other way, in a way that overemphasises the perfect, can be quite unhelpful. Thinking that we are expected to have a ready relationship with Jesus that operates differently could be the reason why we can, at times, find it hard to pray. With Jesus, there are also times of great appreciation for the graces that God grants us that should be celebrated with laughter and with singing and with joy, just like with our earthly relationships. There are also times of confusion where we might not be sure what God's plan has laid out for us, and this can cause us to question or feel anger, just like with our earthly relationships. There are also times when we do not know how we feel about something or what to say exactly, so silence seems the most appropriate response, just like with our earthly relationships. The key piece of advice that my husband and I were given when we were preparing to get married was to communicate fully, so that we always had an appreciation and an understanding for where the other person was at. And so too it is with prayer. I'm not, however, going to pretend that it is as easy as that with our loved ones or with Jesus. But our commitment to trying to foster this sort of relationship is what is key. When we finally have a conversation that we've been putting off or avoiding, even if it doesn't quite go the way that we wanted it to, we always feel better for having begun it. We feel a little further on a journey. That perseverance to have had that conversation helps to form us, and we grow a little. Prayer can seem daunting. If you've ever been in a group of people, perhaps at a meeting or a shared meal, and someone asks you to lead the prayer, it can cause panic and anxiety, especially if there are people in that group who you deem to be more suitable in their role to carry out that practice. But in its simplest of forms, prayer is sitting with the Lord, in his presence, just as we are. I once attended a seminar where Bishop Thomas McMahon was presenting, and he spoke a little of prayer and its importance. And as if he could read into my mind, he described people's often shared embarrassments of having made the time to pray, but then finding themselves sitting there and completing their shopping list in their heads or making a to-do list of the things on their list for the week. He quoted Cardinal Basil Hume, who regularly spoke of the struggle of prayer, but also in the power of perseverance, the plugging away at it, as he put it, and that this could yield great results. He said, trying to pray is praying, so never give up trying. We are encouraged to try to pray, and in trying, in beginning, we enter into that conversation. We might wander off, but we're still sitting with God who wants to listen. And so we shouldn't feel too disheartened. One thing we can try to do is to find opportunities to make more space for prayer. My last summer holiday was, like many of us, before the pandemic, and my husband and I completed the last 100 kilometres of the Camino in Spain. And though we've got associations with Lourdes and we were married in Rome, this was to be our first real pilgrimage together. It's become a very popular destination for those on walking holidays. And in fact, none of the people that we met on the walk, were walking for pilgrimage. But all of them asked similar questions of life and were seeking similar experiences as we were. And so we found that each day, talking about our faith with them and visiting churches together along the way, each day we were praying with our feet. And since that trip, we have been looking for when we might get another chance to walk more of it. The simplicity of that experience, the peace it gave, and the time it created to be given over to prayer are all too lacking in our everyday lives, that we look with great hope for when we might be able to go again and walk some more of it. And I'm getting better at identifying appropriate opportunities to pray in my everyday. I have a decade of the Rosary on my keys, so that on my walk to the station or on the train or during playground duty, I might devote that moment to prayer. And at the school I'm currently at, we're very lucky to have a beautiful chapel. And when I remind myself that I am not too busy to pray and to go and spend some time in that chapel, I'm also reminded of the grace that prayer gives. Mother Teresa said, if you are too busy to pray, you're too busy. And that's an important mantra to remember. And if I make the time, but then find myself not knowing what to say when I get to the chapel or when I sit in prayer, I say nothing and use the time to be still with God. In our other relationships, it's not always about us. And sometimes we have to sit and listen too. This I find easiest to do in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Perhaps appropriately, I never seem to be able to find the right words or the right prayer that works for me in that environment. And so instead I sit and I listen and I be. And I get a real strength from that time. If we want to continue the meaningful relationship with Christ, we have to make the time to be with the Lord and to let that time form us.